It all started with an argument that felt like any other disagreement we'd had over the years. Petty, fleeting, and ultimately meaningless. Or so I thought. That day in Italy, as we stood outside a quaint cafe nestled along cobblestone streets, Gabriel's friends egged him on, their laughter blending with the hum of tourists passing by. What began as a casual lunch to celebrate their annual reunion turned into something far darker than I could have imagined. The tension escalated quickly, fueled by too much wine and years of pent-up resentment. Words were exchanged, sharp and cutting, but nothing prepared me for what came next. Gabriel slammed the car door shut after me, his voice cold and mocking. "You'll figure it out," he sneered, his words slurring slightly from the alcohol, but carrying a venom I hadn't heard before. Then, just as the tail lights of our rental car disappeared around the bend, leaving me stranded in this unfamiliar town, reality hit me like a freight train. My phone was dead, not just low on battery, but completely useless. It wasn't until later that I realized why. Gabriel had deliberately poured water into my purse earlier that day, ruining both my phone and any chance I had of contacting help. The betrayal cut deeper when I tried calling him back. 27 calls sent straight to voicemail. Texts delivered but unanswered. Desperation clawed at my chest as I frantically dialed his friends. Pete, Marco, anyone who might answer. But every single number led to silence. They weren't ignoring me. They'd blocked me. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment prank. No, this was premeditated cruelty disguised as a joke. As night fell, I replayed fragments of the afternoon in my mind. The way Gabriel laughed while pretending to reassure his friends over the phone, saying, "She'll be fine." He wanted me to feel powerless, to teach me a lesson about dependence. But what he didn't realize was that his actions would become the catalyst for my liberation. Standing there under the dim glow of streetlights, surrounded by strangers speaking a language I barely understood, I felt utterly alone. Yet, in that moment of despair, a spark ignited within me, a quiet determination not to let him win. Little did Gabriel know, his attempt to break me would set me free. The weight of my situation crashed over me like a tidal wave as I stood in that dingy pawnshop, clutching the only valuable thing I had left, my wedding ring. The 2-carat diamond Gabriel had gifted me on our 5th anniversary gleamed under the harsh fluorescent light, its brilliance mocking my desperation. The shopkeeper, a wiry man with calculating eyes, examined it closely. "Not worth much," he said dismissively, pushing a paltry stack of euros across the counter. My heart sank. I knew he was lying. The ring was worth at least 5 times what he offered. But what choice did I have? With no ID, no credit cards, everything locked away in Gabriel's wallet, I was trapped in his web of control even from miles away. As I stepped out of the shop, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows on the cobblestone streets, I felt exposed, vulnerable. Every step seemed heavier than the last, the small wad of cash burning a hole in my pocket. That's when I noticed them. 2 men lingering near a parked scooter, their gazes darting between me and the shop door. My pulse quickened. They followed me casually at first, then more deliberately, their footsteps echoing ominously behind me. Panic clawed at my throat as I turned into a narrow alley, hoping to lose them. Instead, they closed in, one blocking my path while the other sneered, "Hand it over." My mind raced. Fight or flight. Adrenaline surged through me, and I bolted deeper into the labyrinth of alleys, my impractical sandals slipping on damp stones. A sharp pain shot through my ankle as I stumbled, but I forced myself up, tears blurring my vision. Just as despair threatened to swallow me whole, a soft voice called out, "Hey, over here." An elderly woman stood in the shadows of a doorway, motioning urgently. Without hesitation, I dove inside, her frail hands pulling me into a tiny storage room filled with crates and old furniture. She whispered something in Italian, her tone fierce yet comforting, before peeking outside to ensure we weren't followed. When she finally turned to me, her weathered face softened. "You're safe now," she murmured in broken English. Her kindness broke something inside me, a dam of fear and humiliation, and I sobbed quietly, clinging to the fragile lifeline she'd thrown me. For the first time since Gabriel abandoned me, I allowed myself to feel hope. This stranger, this angel, had risked herself for me. And though I didn't know it yet, Her act of compassion would set me on a path toward freedom, a path far removed from the life Gabriel tried to define for me. The decision to leave Italy wasn't just an escape, it was survival. Each bus ticket I purchased felt like a step further from the life Gabriel had tried to define for me, and closer to something I couldn't yet name, but desperately wanted: freedom. The journey to Greece was grueling, a patchwork of overnight buses, ferries, and winding mountain roads that left my body aching and my mind racing. My phone, the last tether to the world I knew, finally gave out somewhere between borders, a cruel twist of fate that plunged me into complete isolation. Without it, I was untethered, adrift in a sea of unfamiliarity. The weight of this silence hit me hardest during those long, sleepless nights on cramped buses, staring out at landscapes illuminated only by the occasional flicker of headlights. By the time I arrived in the small Greek village where fate would lead me, exhaustion had hollowed me out. The sun bore down mercilessly as I wandered aimlessly, my blistered feet throbbing inside impractical sandals meant for sightseeing, not survival. Dehydration clawed at my throat, and hunger gnawed at my stomach. I barely registered the olive groves surrounding me before my knees buckled, the ground rushing up to meet me. Darkness swallowed my vision, and for a moment, I thought this might be the end, an ironic symmetry to how Gabriel had abandoned me, alone and vulnerable, in one foreign country, only to collapse in another. But fate had other plans. When I came to, I found myself lying on a cool stone floor, the scent of herbs hanging from wooden beams filling the air. An elderly woman with kind eyes hovered over me, her weathered hands patting my cheeks gently. Behind her stood an older man, his face lined with years of labor under the Greek sun. They introduced themselves as Elena and Nikos, their voices cautious but not unkind. Though they offered me water and shelter, I could sense their suspicion. Who was this stranger, collapsing on their land? Was she running from something? Or someone? To test my intentions, they set me to work almost immediately. The tasks were punishing, especially for someone unaccustomed to physical labor. Under the relentless Greek sun, I dug soil, hauled water, and planted saplings until my hands blistered and bled. Each movement felt like fire coursing through muscles I didn't know existed. Yet, despite the pain, there was a strange satisfaction in the work, a rhythm that began to quiet the chaos in my mind. Still, I noticed the way Elena watched me, her sharp eyes assessing every move, every reaction. It wasn't just about whether I could endure, it was about whether I deserved their trust. On the third day, as I struggled to carry a heavy bucket of water uphill, Nikos approached me. His expression was unreadable, but his tone carried a challenge. "Why here?" he asked slowly, his broken English deliberate. I hesitated, then answered honestly, "Because I have nowhere else." Something shifted in his gaze, not pity, but perhaps understanding. That night, as we shared a simple meal of bread, olive oil, and cheese, Elena placed a hand over mine. Her touch was warm, grounding. For the first time since Gabriel abandoned me, I allowed myself to hope, not for rescue, but for reinvention. The storm hit without warning, a ferocious beast unleashed upon the quiet countryside. One moment, Elena and Nikos were calmly preparing dinner. The next, thunder roared like cannon fire, shaking the old farmhouse to its foundation. Rain poured in sheets, flooding the dirt paths that wound through their olive groves. I had seen storms before, on TV, from the safety of Boston's sleek high-rises, but nothing could have prepared me for this chaos. Elena grabbed my arm, her voice sharp with urgency. "Chickens," she shouted over the howling wind. Her eyes darted toward the coop, where dozens of hens huddled together, terrified by the deafening claps of thunder. Without hesitation, Nikos handed me a flashlight, his expression grim but trusting. Together, we ran into the deluge, our boots sinking into mud as lightning illuminated the sky in flashes of electric blue. The chickens panicked as we opened the coop, feathers flying everywhere. Elena expertly scooped them up, cradling each bird against her chest as if they were her own children. Meanwhile, I struggled to keep up, my hands trembling as I tried to gather the frantic birds. The rain soaked through my clothes, chilling me to the bone, but I refused to slow down. This wasn't just about saving animals. It was about proving myself, not just to Elena and Nikos, but to the part of me still haunted by Gabriel's betrayal. When the chickens were safe inside the house, we turned our attention to the olive oil barrels stored near the barn. Water was rising fast, threatening to ruin years of hard work. Nikos barked instructions in Greek, motioning for me to help him lift the heavy containers on a higher ground. My muscles screamed in protest, but adrenaline pushed me forward. At one point, a barrel slipped from my grip, spilling golden liquid across the flooded floor. For a split second, I froze, guilt crashing over me. But Elena placed a steadying hand on my shoulder, whispering, "Together." That night, as we collapsed exhausted onto chairs around the kitchen table, something shifted. Nikos nodded at me, his approval unspoken but unmistakable. Elena smiled softly, tears glistening in her eyes. It wasn't just gratitude. They saw Sophia in me now, a daughter who would fight alongside them, no matter the odds. It started with a crisp envelope delivered to the farmhouse one morning. Inside was an official-looking letter from Industrial Enterprises, demanding that Elena and Nikos sell their land for a fraction of its worth or face legal consequences. They claimed ownership over a significant portion of the groves, citing old property records that had supposedly been overlooked. Panic rippled through Elena as she clutched the paper, her hands trembling. "They will take everything," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't just about olive trees. It was their legacy, their daughter Sophia's memory, and now my future too. The company sent representatives 2 days later, sharp-suited men who arrived in a sleek black car, their polished shoes sinking into the dirt. "You're fighting a losing battle," one said smugly, sliding a contract across the kitchen table. Nikos glared but said nothing, his jaw clenched tight. That night, I stayed awake poring over every document I could find. Property deeds, tax records, even faded letters from decades ago detailing boundary agreements. My experience managing design projects in Boston came rushing back. I remembered how to organize information, spot inconsistencies, and build a case. With help from Katerina, the village lawyer, we discovered that Industrial's claims were based on outdated maps invalidated by modern surveys. Armed with this evidence, I created a presentation folder complete with annotated maps and highlighted excerpts proving our ownership. When the men returned, expecting compliance, they were met with unwavering resolve. I laid out the documents before them, each page a testament to years of hard work and rightful possession. Their smirks faltered. "You don't want to waste resources on this fight," I said firmly, channeling every ounce of confidence I'd gained since leaving Gabriel behind. Defeated, they left, vowing to appeal, but we knew they wouldn't win. That day, Elena hugged me tightly, her voice breaking. "You saved us." The transformation wasn't immediate. It was a slow, grueling process that tested every ounce of my resolve. At first, managing the olive groves felt like trying to tame an untamable beast. The soil resisted me, the trees seemed indifferent, and the sun scorched my skin until it blistered. But with each passing day, I grew stronger, not just physically but mentally. My hands, once soft and unused to labor, became calloused tools of resilience. I learned to read the subtle signs of disease in the leaves, to time the harvest perfectly for optimal oil quality, and even to anticipate weather patterns that could threaten our crops. But it wasn't enough to simply work the land. I wanted to elevate it. One evening, as I sifted through old sales records, I realized how much potential was being wasted. Our bottles were plain, uninviting, and lacked any story to connect with buyers. That night, I sketched out new label designs, elegant yet simple, highlighting the heritage of Nikos and Elena's centuries-old methods. I added flavor profiles, pairing suggestions, and even a small blurb about the family's history. When I presented the mock-ups to Elena and Nikos, their eyes lit up with pride. "This is your touch," Nikos said, his voice thick with emotion. Weeks later, at the village market, customers lingered longer at our stall, drawn by the vibrant labels and detailed brochures I created. Sales soared, and soon neighboring restaurants began placing orders. It was during one such bustling market day that Elena pulled me aside. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "We're old, Alexis. The trees need younger hands." She gestured toward the sprawling groves, her eyes filled with both hope and vulnerability. They offered me full partnership, not out of charity, but because they saw what I had become, a leader, a creator, someone capable of carrying their legacy forward. I accepted, tears streaming down my face. This wasn't just a business deal. It was proof that I had rebuilt myself from ashes into something extraordinary. The tranquil rhythm of life in the Greek village was shattered one Thursday morning when the distant hum of a sleek rental car engine pierced the stillness. Gabriel had arrived, but he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a sharply dressed man with an air of calculated authority, a lawyer, no less. My stomach churned as I watched them step out of the car, their polished shoes sinking into the dusty earth that surrounded Elena and Nico's humble farmhouse. This wasn't just a visit, it was an ambush. Gabriel's eyes scanned the property with barely concealed disdain before landing on me. "Alexis," he called, his voice laced with forced calm. "We need to talk." His gaze flickered over my sunburned arms, work-worn hands, and simple clothes, a smirk tugging at his lips. "You look different." I crossed my arms, refusing to let his condescension unsettle me. "What do you want, Gabriel?" His tone shifted instantly, slick and rehearsed. "You left without permission, sold our marital assets." He gestured vaguely toward my ring finger, and disappeared. "That money belongs to us. You're in debt, Alexis. And if you don't cooperate, we'll involve the authorities." The lawyer stepped forward then, holding up a document filled with legal jargon. "Under Greek law," he began in halting English, "you could face charges for abandoning your residence abroad. Deportation is possible." My heart pounded, but I held my ground. These were empty threats now. They couldn't touch me here. Still, the weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Gabriel leaned closer, his voice dropping low. "Do you really think they'll choose you over me? A foreigner who stumbled into their lives? They'll believe me when I tell them you're unstable, running from responsibilities." Elena appeared at the doorway behind me, her presence steady and unwavering. Nikos joined her moments later, both watching silently but protectively. Their silent support bolstered my courage. "You underestimated me once, Gabriel," I said evenly. "Don't make the same mistake twice." He bristled, clearly unaccustomed to defiance. "This isn't about choices, Alexis. It's about consequences. If you won't come willingly, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you are. The woman who abandoned her husband, her home, her life." For a moment, doubt flickered through me. What if people believed him? But then I remembered the olive groves, the laughter shared during harvest season, the friendships forged under the Mediterranean sun. Gabriel didn't understand this place, or me, anymore. Steeling myself, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the signed partnership agreement Elena had handed me earlier. "I'm not leaving," I said firmly. "Not with you. Not ever again." Gabriel's face twisted into a mask of disbelief as I handed him the envelope containing the divorce papers and the signed partnership agreement. His fingers trembled slightly, anger simmering beneath his polished exterior. "You think this is real?" he spat, gesturing dismissively at the modest farmhouse behind me. This charade? You're throwing away everything we built for this." I met his gaze steadily, my voice unwavering. "I'm not throwing anything away, Gabriel. I'm choosing something better, something real, something that belongs to me." The weight of those words hung heavy in the air, each syllable a testament to how far I'd come since the day he left me stranded in Italy. Back then, I was lost, broken, and desperate to prove myself worthy of his approval. Now, I stood rooted like the ancient olive trees surrounding us, unshakable and free. His jaw clenched as he flipped through the documents, his eyes narrowing at the legal language detailing our separation and the division of assets. "Do you have any idea what people are saying about you back home?" he snapped, his tone laced with venom. "Your parents called me Alexis. Friends asked questions. Colleagues wondered why you weren't there for events. Do you know what it looks like when your wife vanishes without explanation? It makes us look unstable." A chill ran down my spine, but I didn't flinch. "And whose fault is that, Gabriel? Did you ever stop to consider how isolating me from my own life might affect things? Or did you just assume I'd come crawling back once I realized how unlivable life would be without you?" He faltered, caught off guard by my directness. For years, he had controlled not just our finances, but also my social circle, subtly discouraging friendships and dismissing my career aspirations. He thought I'd crumble under the pressure of solitude. Instead, I had thrived. When I returned to my room that evening, I powered up my phone again, scrolling through old emails and messages. What I found confirmed my suspicions. Gabriel hadn't just abandoned me. He'd actively worked to sabotage my reputation. Conversations with mutual friends revealed that he'd told them I was depressed and needed an extended break abroad, a convenient lie to explain my absence while protecting his image. Fury ignited within me, but alongside it came clarity. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every woman who had been gaslit, manipulated, or silenced by someone they trusted. That night, I sat at Elena's kitchen table, typing furiously on my laptop. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I poured out my story. The betrayal, the struggle, the slow journey towards self-discovery. I wrote about Gabriel's cruelty, the kindness of strangers who became family, and the strength I found in rebuilding my life among olive groves and sun-drenched hills. The post went live at dawn, accompanied by photos of the farm, my calloused hands holding freshly harvested olives, and a selfie with Elena and Nikos smiling beside me. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. Comments flooded in, messages of support, solidarity, and gratitude. Women shared their own stories of overcoming abuse, abandonment, and manipulation. Journalists reached out, eager to interview me. Local news outlets picked up the story, framing it as a tale of resilience and empowerment. Gabriel watched silently as his carefully constructed facade crumbled. The man who prided himself on appearances couldn't compete with authenticity. When reporters contacted him for comment, he refused, retreating further into shame. As weeks turned into months, I embraced my new role, not just as a business partner, but as a symbol of hope. Speaking engagements followed, interviews aired on television, and I began mentoring women navigating similar struggles. The farm flourished, too, thanks to innovative marketing strategies and community support. Every bottle of olive oil carried not just flavor, but a message: freedom tastes sweetest when earned. Looking back, I realized Gabriel's greatest mistake wasn't leaving me. It was underestimating me. By trying to break me, he had set me free. Gabriel's betrayal, meant to humiliate and control me, became the catalyst for a transformation I never saw coming. What he thought was a cruel joke, leaving me stranded in an unfamiliar country, turned out to be the act that freed me from a life where I had slowly disappeared into his shadow. As I stood on the sun-drenched hills of Greece, surrounded by ancient olive trees and the quiet strength of Elena and Nikos, I realized something profound. Sometimes, it takes being broken apart completely to rediscover who you truly are. The scars of Gabriel's cruelty ran deep, but they also revealed truths I had buried under years of compromise. His dismissal of my dreams, his subtle manipulations, his insistence on molding me into the perfect accessory for his polished life. All of these were chains I hadn't even known I wore. When he drove away laughing that day in Italy, he left behind more than just a wife. He abandoned the woman who once dreamed of designing spaces that inspired joy, creativity, and connection. But here, among the olive groves, I found her again, not as Alexis, the supportive spouse, but as Alexis, the creator, the survivor, the woman unafraid to get her hands dirty. Every challenge since then, the blistered feet, the exhaustion, the fear of starting over, became stepping stones rather than obstacles. They taught me resilience, resourcefulness, and the value of hard-won independence. Each olive harvest reminded me that growth often comes from struggle, that beauty emerges not despite hardship, but because of it. The soil beneath my nails wasn't dirt. It was proof that I could nurture something meaningful, that I could rebuild myself stronger than before. When I look back at the woman I was, a woman who believed she needed permission to exist, I feel both sorrow and gratitude. Sorrow for the years lost to someone else's expectations, but gratitude for the fire that forged me anew. Gabriel underestimated me, thinking I'd crumble without him. Instead, his actions lit a spark within me, one that grew into an unshakable belief in my own worth. Life will always throw storms our way, moments that threaten to wash us away. But those same storms can carve rivers through mountains, creating paths we never imagined possible. My journey isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving. It's about proving that even when the world tries to break you, there's power in choosing how to rise. And if my story inspires just one person to seek their freedom, to embrace their potential, then every tear, Every drop of sweat, every sleepless night was worth it.